name is Helen Kirchin, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to assemble a metapopulation microcosm plate. The first thing that you should do is to make sure that you are wearing appropriate personal protective equipment. So don't forget, especially if you are reusing some of the pieces of your device, these are pieces that have already been exposed to hazardous materials in the course of your lab work. So you want to make sure that you are wearing the appropriate protective equipment to deal with that. And in our lab, that means latex or nitrile gloves and a lab coat. Next, make sure that your benchtop is clean and free of everything except what you need for your assembly process. Next, make sure that you have everything that you need for your assembly process together and that all of your pieces are in good condition. So each MMP is made of 11 layers. You have your thick top layer here with the wells cut into it. You have a slightly thinner bottom layer, which has only the screw holes and is otherwise clear. You need 5 silicone rubber gaskets and 4 thin interior layers, which are the layers that have your corridors cut into them. So you want to check and make sure that each of these layers is in good condition. Your bottom layer should be totally clear, free from scratches and abrasions, and completely clean. You also want to check and make sure that the autoclaving process, if you're reusing one of these bottoms, you want to make sure that the autoclaving process has not caused the bottom to warp at all. So you want to just look along its length here and just make sure that everything is totally flat. You want to check each one of your gaskets and make sure that it's nice and elastic still, that nothing is dried out or cracked, and that the edge of each screw hole and well hole is free of any cracks or breaks. And then finally you want to take a look at each of your interior layers. Take a look at the corridors and make sure that there are no small pieces of plastic or dust that are blocking any of the corridors in your layers. So for example, here is a bottom layer that has some pretty bad scratches. I don't know how well these are going to show up on the video here, but you can see, for example, up in this corner there are some pretty bad abrasions in this area. Back along here there are some bad scratches, and it's also slightly warped, ever so slightly, and so this is a bottom layer that I would just throw out. There's really no way to buff those scratches out so that it's completely optically clear. So I'm just going to get rid of that guy there. And then if we want to look at an example of a gasket here, where we've got some spots where in a previous assembly process it looks like this screw hole maybe got caught against a screw, and it's a little bit ripped along the edge here. So again, we would not want to use a gasket that is in that condition. And finally, if you look at this interior layer, you may be able to see that that some of these corridors have some small bits of plastic here in the edges, and you just want to get rid of anything like that. I've got a small file that you can use for something like that, and just sort of very gently make sure that there is nothing blocking those very small corridors. So just make sure everything's nice and clear there. Okay, now to really begin our assembly process, you want to start with a clean, dry jig for your assembly. And there are 35 holes for your hex nuts. So each one of those should have a single hex nut laying nice and flat. So you just want to take one nut and put it in each little hole here. Okay, so now we've got a hex nut here in every hole, and next we want to start by putting the top in, because really what we're doing here is we're building our MMP upside down. So we put the hex nuts in first, followed by the top, and then from now on we're just going to alternate everything with a silicone rubber gasket. So we've got our top in, and now we just want to very gently lay in a gasket here. Slide that right in so it's all nice and aligned. And then we'll alternate that gasket with our interior layers. So we just do gasket, interior layer, gasket, interior layer, and this is why it's so important to lay everything out ahead of time, because once you start alternating these gaskets and interior layers, it's really easy to lose track of how many layers you have already put in, and you don't want to have to undo all of your work and start over again on one of these. So I'll put in our second interior layer here, followed by another gasket. Okay, and then after we add our last gasket in here, the bottom is the last layer to go on. And then you just want to put a single screw in every screw hole here. So just grab our guy here, put it right through the middle to hold everything together, and then place a screw in every little hole here, and they should just slide in pretty easily. Slide that in like that. I usually put them in the corners first to hold everything in place, keep things from sliding around, and then just slide them in one after another here. Okay, and then once you have a screw in every hole here, what you want to do is tighten the screws down just enough so that they pick up their corresponding hex nut, but not enough so that the screw is actually placing any pressure on the setup. Because we want to autoclave this, and you don't want the polycarbonate to go through the autoclave under any kind of pressure. So I usually use an electric screwdriver for this part just to get things started, and then tighten it down by hand. And this just makes things go a little faster to use the electric screwdriver. Obviously, you can use whatever kind of screwdriver you want for this section. So. Okay, and then once each screw has been started and caught its hex nut, you can pop the whole setup right out of the jig here, and then you just want to tighten each screw down until it's as tight as you can get with your fingers, so that it's not really putting any pressure on anything, but so that it's just tight enough to keep the hex nut from falling off. So I'll just tighten each one down here. Okay, and then once all those screws have been tightened down by hand, you can just set this aside and go ahead and set up and assemble the rest of the MMPs that you need for your experiment.